So we will move to the discussion. So we can have like both specific questions for the specific speakers, or we can also have a general question for both speakers. So any question?
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Satish, for very nice talks. So I have a project where I work with a few social scientists, and what they worry about night and day, I guess, is they really worry about people's jobs. I think we're quite. Sometimes I feel like we're very focused on the technology part of it, but they worry about that part. And since given your two talks, my question to you is, although we do talk about having the tool there, using the tool, having it do more and more. I feel like in some of the discussions I have with people in industry, particularly in banks, they get a bit of pushback from their developers because I think they're worried about their jobs. So the question is, what are your thoughts about that? And do you think that that might actually hinder adoption or usability, or at some point sort of do we hit a glass ceiling because the people might be worried about their jobs?
I think this is a great question for Tom Zimmermann.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. And so I think so basically I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, and I think most people don't know what what I think is going to happen is that basically it is going to change what it means to be a software engineer, because there's certain parts of software where we can just use much more automation than we could use before, and it basically allows us for fewer people to write software more quickly. But at the same time, like the systems that are using AI, they're not going to be perfect. They're still going to introduce bugs, and we still need people who figure out what we have the AI systems right anyway in the first place. So I think my view on all of this is it's like, I don't think software engineering is going to go away. I think software engineering is a fairly safe job, but you need to be able to adjust over time, right? And that's, if you think about it, that's something you've always had to do as a software engineer, right? Because you had different front ends, back ends, different database systems that you had to learn over time. You could just not learn a programming language once and stick with the one programming language for 40 or 50 years of your professional career. So I think there's the role of software engineering is going to change. Hopefully, we're going to still need many software engineers, and also in a position that more people can take on software engineering roles. I do think that the way we build software is also going to change at some point. I hope that was sort of a okay response.
Hi, hello. I'm Gustavo. Thank you for the talk. I have a question for Tom. So you got very interesting feedback from the developers, right? Including factors that negatively impact trust, right? So I'm just curious to know if this feedback was sent to the team developing Copilot, and if yes, what are the things that they're going to prioritize moving forward?
I mean, a lot of feedback was shared with GitHub Copilot, and some of it was built into the tool. I don't know what we're like right now. Like one thing to keep in mind is a lot of the studies that I showed today, they're basically we did, I think, summer of 2022. So So GitHub Copilot moved very quickly and like a lot of things have changed since then. But I think the concept of trust is still important to think about. Like how we can make sure that you can trust the tools.
Hi, this is for Satish. You were talking about evaluations and how that matters, and the funnel effect. Do you think that as developers use this, their expectations are going to increase, and the evals are going to have to increase, and it's just that these tools are always going to be playing catch up with what they expect it to be doing?
Yes, I think that's a very good observation that over time we would have to revise the evals upwards to accommodate developers' increased expectations. Over time, developers will learn to expect more from models, and models are naturally becoming more and more powerful. So it doesn't make sense to stick to the same eval for a period of 10 years or even 5 years. I think they do need to be updated time to time. But having good state-of-the-art evals actually does help drive the field forward, because model builders are looking at evals as a way to essentially compete, right? You have to do well on these benchmarks, and these benchmarks, in my opinion at least, they should reflect what happens in practice. Now, benchmark like human eval has inherent virtues because code generation is an inherently interesting task, and ML people would argue that it is very good, and it correlates with other model quality improvements anyway, so that's good. But for folks like us who are in software engineering, we should probably want to see more direct improvements in the kinds of things that we use these tools for. And I'm sure the vendors of these tools actually do have their own benchmarks that they use to drive their own product quality. Because without benchmarks, it's very hard to say if the product improving or not.
And as a follow-up to that, to Tom, have you in your experiments noticed whether, this is May here, Tom, in case you can't see me, if in your experiments, have you seen whether once they start trusting, do they still need to be convinced about this, or are they, is the trust also kind of the goalpost moving, or are people, once they trust the system, they don't care, or they start allowing more mistakes to come through?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing we've seen is that there's like a certain level of trust that once you reach, like people feel fairly fairly happy with the tools. But also, I think the important thing is, and we call it like appropriate level of trust, because also the trust is very context specific, and it also is changing over time, right? Because even if some developer trusts the tool now like 100% and they're very happy with how the tool is performing, if a tool makes a few bad recommendations, the trust can be lost as quickly, if not quicker, than it can be gained. So it's basically trust is evolving, and it needs to be appropriate for the situation that you're using a tool.
So I guess this is a question maybe Satish can answer. So you, at the very beginning, you showed you trying to replicate some of the published papers with more trendy kind of generative AI tools, and it works, right? But the problem, as we see when we're using these tools, if we ask them directly generate code, it's still likely buggy. We have to figure out how to do it and so on. So, and similarly, people kind of now learn whenever they're trying to generate something, they also do things like self-reflection, right? Ask them to double check and so on. So in other words, it's really like not AI replacing human for doing what they're doing, but it's more like you actually have specific steps. You need the AI tools to double check and do the thing. So in theory, I don't know if you believe this would work, is we start doing code generation based on the specification, but we ask them questions along the way, like, is the code optimized? Can you generate the test oracle and so on? Do you think this kind of step would eventually go away based on the tools, AI models or things get more sophisticated, or the process would still remain the same as our human kind of develop these kind of software?
So I think you're making a very good point. I think you are already referring to these very recent papers where generating test and asking it to check the work and all that is actually part of the work that the agent or a multi-agent does in the process of code generation. That's what you are referring to. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's a good trend. Now, maybe part of your question is whether the artifacts produced along the way become part of the repository and actually use those tests as tests for regression testing later on or not. Probably. I think it's very possible that you persist the intermediate artifact, but the automation of code creation where it does its own self-checking and looking for performance improvements and looking for interesting failing tests if possible and things like that. I think that's very much happening at least at the cutting edge of technology.
So we still have to do that, asking AI to do that step.
Absolutely. We could have humans do it, but since the AI's competence is already reaching there, it seems to me that why not use those things? Because the difference, as I see it, that you could manually do this work of having some code and then separately you either yourself or using an AI create the downstream tests and quality control artifacts and then use it against the code that got generated. But you might as well also have the AI just do those things back to back. So I think that's definitely possible. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I had a question, I guess, for both speakers. So Tom, it's Ahmed here. So both of you, whether it's Google or Microsoft, you have very different products being developed, all the way from, like, say, kernels, all the way to UI, very high-level stuff, mobile, and all these different domains. The type of code is very different, and as well the type of people working in this. Like at least in my opinion, a C developer trusts nobody, including the compiler. Okay, whereas Python developers just let it go as it goes, right? So I'm wondering if both of you could comment based on your presentations if you're observing these major differences between the different populations of developers or the different populations of softwares that you're seeing, and what are your thoughts? Like, we have very good successes in some areas, and in other areas, whether it comes about trust or performance of these models, is going to be much harder.
I think we have some data about, whether looking at various language segments, we see drastically different behaviors or not. And I cannot share that data, but in summary, I didn't think, at least for the popular languages that we use in our company, I don't think there is like a huge difference that would just jump out at you. So among the popular languages, this could be because of maybe the size of training material is comparable in those cases. The quality of the model seems to be working fine for the languages that are in popular use. Is that the intent of your question?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So this is more on the domain and maybe on the people themselves. So maybe
so the domain segmentation, I don't know. I don't think, at least I am not aware of if we have broken down the data by domain. Maybe someone has, but I don't have that information. Yeah. Tom, do you have
it's
anything to add
similar
here?
for us. I don't really have much to add. Like we've seen, it's performed similar for different programming languages for us as well, and I haven't seen anyone doing like a domain breakdown.
Hi, Malihe Izadi from TU Delft, Netherlands. Thank you both for the very interesting talks. My question is for Tom. I wonder, did you look into the expertise level and the background of your participants on the level of trust they exuded?
We did not, but I think it's a really good point and something important to look at.
Yeah, hi. So maybe another question, just following up on Ahmed's comments or question. I think, in academia, we get quite a push to try and update curriculum, to adapt our curriculum, given the fact that LLMs are here. So my question is, do you envision, or do you see that companies have maybe updated the job interview questions? Are you expecting that, hey, programmers are going to have an LLM? Maybe we don't need to get them to sort a list or whatever they need to do. Are things being modified, or are you still sort of holding to the same interview questions?
So I can talk from our experience. Like when we interview students for research internships, we have like a small coding question, just to get some idea of like if people can understand code and identify issues in code. And this year was the first time where we actually had to rethink how we ask this question, because basically the language models like ChatGPT reached the model that during an interview you could just take a screenshot of the code that we were showing to you. It also had the questions, you just pasted it into ChatGPT with a very short prompt, and it gave you back reasonable responses. And we had like one interview where, based on the response of a candidate, we were thinking, oh, that person likely did this, because just if you use a lot of ChatGPT, you kind of can spot ChatGPT language, and it was very much like he was speaking in ChatGPT language during the coding part of the interview. And so I think from an interview perspective, we definitely have to make changes to how we interview people and how we identify that they have these skills, that we are going to be successful in an AI world. And I think also eventually the skills that we're looking for are going to change. Right, because you will have to work with something like a GPT model as part of your software development work going forward.
I also have a follow-up question to Tom. So not for the interview process, and also what impact do the AI model on the existing developer already hired in the company for like a software development? Do they change? Are there any impact for their career paths for the developers? So not for the interview already. So a software developer already hired in software development team. So when consider if we have an AI powered tool, then are there any like impact for their career? Like what kind of like a career path do they go?
So I don't know any study which looked into the impact on the careers. The AI powered tools, they affect the software engineers in that they have more tools that they can use and more powerful tools that they can use. Right. So like one way of works, like for example, you've seen that a lot of developers spend now more time on reading code than writing code. So that's one shift that we are seeing. So and so it will definitely impact how people work. I don't know yet if it has any impact on the career path.
Are there any question, comment? I think, yeah, we can close this session. Yeah, thanks. Okay, sorry, Hoots, you have one more question.
So, nice talk, Tom and Satish. So, Tom, I have a question, maybe more a curiosity about the point that you raised on the role of online communities in building, in affecting developer trust in these AI tools. And then what you were suggesting is that somehow while building those tools, it will be interesting to inject some signal coming from this community to emulate trust. But thinking deeply about this, my question for you is, do you think there isn't a risk in just developing trust in a tool based on the perception of the community of users online versus the real trustworthiness of the tool that they are using? Like how do you see this interplay, like people being influenced somehow by the perception of the majority of users versus the trustworthiness of the tool that they are using? Is it really a good idea to inject these signals instead of making sure focusing on increasing the trustworthiness of the tool itself? Like, how do you see this interplay? How do you interpret this actually?
Well, so what I think, I'm not saying that trustworthiness is not important. So it's actually really important, right? But then you also have the perception of what people think about the tool. And when you create a new tool, you really have to think about, like, how do you get people to use your tool? How do they get the feeling that there is actually trustworthiness, right? You can have the most trustworthy tool. You can, it can be perfect with respect to security, quality, but it could be that the perception among your community is that it is not a good tool and we don't trust your tool, right? And it could be because we don't trust you or because of other reasons, right? So, and I think what we were trying to make, the point we're trying to make with the trust research is, it's not just a single thing that affects trust, it's a combination of many aspects that you have to think about when you want a community to trust what you're doing or what your tool is doing.
Okay.
Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's just that the crowd is not necessarily wise, right? Necessarily injecting the right signals. So there.
That's why you have to think about how you can control the crowd, or like how you can help the crowd to be smarter.
Thank you.
Okay, let's thanks to the Tom and Satish.